Fire!
Hey, how goes it?
Going good.
That's awesome. That's what I like to hear. There you go. All right, so our next speaker, you all know, has been hosting today. Will be hosting tomorrow. Is Ben Perrin. You can find him hosting the BTC Sessions YouTube show or on Twitter as BTC Sessions. Give a round of applause for Ben Perrin, everybody.
Yeah.
Hello everyone. Thank you very much. You've already seen me all day, so I guess I don't really need to introduce myself too much here. But yes, I do run a YouTube channel called the BTC Sessions. So what I'd like to do today for my time up here is I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey into cryptocurrency, how I got started, some of the lessons that I've learned over time, and some of my excitement looking to the future, and some of my worries looking to the future, and what I think we can do about them. So if you're unfamiliar, that cartoon face is me, and I've been running my channel since early 2016. So I first saw Bitcoin in 2013, and I started to kind of notice it. I saw a few articles here and there, saw it when it was like $10, $12, $13. Kind of got curious, but didn't really touch it. A couple months later, it was $100, and I was going, oh shit, I missed the boat. Ignored it again, and then near the end of the year, it had this huge parabolic pump where it went up over $1,000 for the first time ever. It was about 1,200 US dollars. And it was at that point I started thinking, okay, maybe I should actually read about this and try to understand it more, because that kind of a price increase, it seems kind of bubbly, and it seems like maybe it's a scam, maybe it's a Ponzi scheme, something. So I started actually trying to read and find videos and any sort of materials that I could to understand it better. There wasn't a ton available, and that kind of helped shape my journey. But I did come across some good content. One of the people that I found early on that was probably the most influential in shaping what I wanted to do was Andreas Antonopoulos. Yeah. And if you've been in the space for a while, you've probably seen at least one of his videos. Even though you may not be familiar with the name if you're brand new, you will be. You will see him around. He's everywhere, and by far, I think one of the best speakers in the space. So I started my journey, and I didn't actually end up buying any Bitcoin until I had been reading for about 2 to 3 months. And the timing happened like this. I finally found a way to buy some Bitcoin, and I made my first purchase, and then Mt. Gox collapsed. Yeah. So Mt. Gox, if you're unfamiliar, was an online exchange. It was basically where the majority of all cryptocurrency was being bought and traded on the planet. And it turns out that they were not doing a good job of keeping their books. They had been hacked earlier on, and a lot of the cryptocurrency was gone. And basically, it's like a bank going insolvent, but there was no type of insurance around that. So I was not using Mt. Gox, but because of the misinformation about what was actually happening, people thought that Bitcoin itself had been hacked. And so there was panic, and prices were plummeting, and so that was my first step into Bitcoin. I was lucky enough at the time that I had read enough that I was able to differentiate between poor business practices and the currency itself being broken. So I was able to separate those concepts in my mind and understand that just because somebody poorly ran their business doesn't mean that the currency itself was bad. If a bank goes bust, it doesn't mean that the dollar is broken, even though I still think the dollar is broken. So I continued to pay attention to Bitcoin. I continued to buy and use cryptocurrency. At the time, it was probably in the $800 range. And over the next year, I watched it drop to the $200 range, which is very, very scary. But for some reason, I guess I didn't feel that fear, because I always looked at it and I said, why did I start using this? What problems did this solve? And is that broken? If not, then I was going to stay. If it was broken, then maybe perhaps I would look to other projects. But from what I understood, it wasn't broken. Nothing had changed about the technology itself. It was the emotions of the people using it. And so I stayed. And I continued all the way down to $200. I, took a little bit of my paycheck every month and still bought a little bit more. And everybody thought I was an idiot. I remember people sending me messages with links to all of the obituaries that I've seen over the years. Bitcoin's dead. Oh wait, no, it's actually dead now. Oh wait, no, it wasn't dead before, but now it's dead. And you hear it over and over again. And you hear it particularly when the price is going down. But the thing about Bitcoin is the price goes up and down a lot. So people are very bipolar with this kind of thing. So I continued and I started trying to ingest more content. I found that the content sucked. and it was so dry. It was always some dude in his basement looking sad, sitting on a couch, and it was dark and nothing, it wasn't entertaining, I guess. Not enough to, I was interested in the technology, but sitting through that content, it was tough. It was tough. It was work to learn. And so I started watching stuff and looking for good stuff, and I found Andreas, but other than that, there wasn't really much out there. I remember watching a video from a guy, I won't mention specifically who it was, but he was one of the early people that was creating crypto content, but it was tough to take in because he didn't present it in a way that was friendly to the audience. It was always, like I said, him maybe sitting on a couch. And then I remember watching one video in particular, and for some reason, I just found it so much easier to get through that content. It's not that he was talking about anything different, I couldn't quite put my finger on it, and then finally I go, oh, he's outside, he's walking. And there was this change of scenery around him. He was just going somewhere, going about his day, and he was kind of selfie-style filming, and it was interesting just because it looked like he was on a mission to do something. It looked like I was along with him for the ride. And at this point, I had been traveling a lot. I've traveled to, I think, just shy of 50 countries. And while I was traveling, I always loved taking these travel videos of what I was doing, where I was going. And so I thought, well, maybe I can take that feeling of bringing people with me somewhere to a location and inject that into like an educational piece of content of how does Bitcoin work? Maybe I can use it somewhere in the real world and have people see and follow me along with that journey. And so I decided I was going to start a YouTube channel, BTC Sessions. And I didn't really know exactly where it would go or if anybody would give a shit about anything I was saying. And at the time, nobody did. And that's fine. And so I just started making videos. And I really enjoyed making those videos. So I'm going to show you guys the very first video that I ever put out. And it was just kind of like a teaser of what I wanted to do with my channel. So I'll show you that here. Yes. Woo! I was pretty intense about it. Oh yeah. It's very dramatic music. Took 16 takes.
I do not know how to code. I am not an app developer. I don't have a degree in computer science. I will not create the next Facebook, Google, or Uber. My background is in the arts. I am a singer. I am a dance instructor. I am a world traveler. I love sharing my adventures online, using the internet to connect with people. And I love Bitcoin. I aim to provide a non-technical perspective and open Bitcoin up to people that may feel intimidated by the space. A simple, bare-bones approach to making this new form of money accessible to the masses. I hope you'll join me as I instruct and guide new faces around the globe. Welcome to the BTC Sessions.
So that was the first video that I ever put out. I just kind of wanted to take some of the stuff that I've been doing so far, mash it up, and give people an idea of who I was, see if anybody gave a shit. Like I said, not a lot of people did at first. But I posted it a few places, I put it on the Bitcoin subreddit, and just kind of shared it around. And I made a couple videos, and I started getting some people following and commenting. I thought it was the coolest thing for people to find. I think one of the first things I ever made was a video on how to get a Bitcoin wallet, and then how to use a Bitcoin ATM. First two videos. And I started getting people from really like total opposite parts of the country, parts of the world, commenting, saying, oh cool, how do you do this? And asking me questions. And I started getting engagement and people suggesting other types of content. Around the same time, I was leaving Canada to go and get married in Bali, and I was about to go backpack around Southeast Asia for 5 months. And so that was the start of my journey, and I just said, all I want to do is I want to have one video a week, one video. Regardless of where I am, I'm going to put out a video every single Monday. Doesn't matter what it is, whatever I decide to cover, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put it out, and I have to have that video once a week. That's it, and it has to be consistent. And so I did. The entire 5 months I was gone, a video every single Monday, no matter what, I needed to come up with content. And it was actually easier than I thought, and because it was early in the space, and it still is this case a little bit, people were more than willing to talk to me, to give me some of their time, to be interviewed. I was very lucky that I went to Hong Kong. I met Arthur Hayes, the CEO of BitMEX. And it's funny, actually, they just started renting the most expensive real estate on the planet in Hong Kong. When I met Arthur and he actually sat down for an interview with me, he had me up to his office. It was a single office room with him and a laptop. This was in 2016. They now rent the most expensive real estate on the planet. So how times have changed in just a couple short years. But I've been lucky enough to have chats with people like Eric Voorhees, CEO of Shapeshift, Samson Mao, formerly of Bitcoin China, now with Blockstream. I've been lucky enough to talk with a lot of different people, and I'm very thankful that they gave me the time of day. And at this point, the channel is built up enough now. There's close to 30,000 subscribers. I'm right around, well over 2 million views across all of my content. And I continue to make videos every week. And now I've started collaborating with a lot of different YouTubers as well, because I found that over the past couple of years, even just since I started, so many great content creators have come out and started making bare bones explanations that the people need in order to understand this stuff. And so people like Ken here, you know, like, yeah, I had you on my show and I was on your show very early on. And like, he's a crypto celebrity now. Like, it's everybody, like, he shows up and everybody knows, oh, there's Ken. And it's just been really cool to see the growth. Now, I am now, I've been working with a number of different companies, but I've kind of gone through a few different ones. I did some ATM work with a company called Bitcoin Solutions. They are out of Edmonton. So that was one of my first crypto jobs. I basically went around, cleared out the little ATMs with some cash and helped out with different things, errands like that. Then I did some video content work and creation with Bitcoin Brains, which is based here in Calgary. I then got a job offer and worked for the past year and a bit at a company called BitNational, who's building their own online exchange, and I did a ton of stuff with them. They've got ATMs everywhere. Most recently, I changed pace, and I got hired by a new company that I'm very, very excited to work with. This company is called Satoshi Portal. It's based out of Montreal, and the reason that I wanted to move there is because it's headed by a guy by the name of Francis Pouliot. He is a very big name in the Bitcoin space. I very much agree with his direction. And I'm going to explain what they're trying to do and why I think it's important. So, especially this past year, I've noticed Sorry, I guess time moves quickly. So I'm talking about 2017 here. 2017, it was a little bit of vindication for myself to see all of those people that were calling me an idiot for a couple of years. All of a sudden, I started getting phone calls and asking, what's that thing you were doing again? Like, can you explain some of this to me? How do I set up a wallet? Like, what's what? Is this worth looking at? Is this trash? And it was very, very exciting. And it also got very, very scary near the end of 2017. At the time I was working at BitNational, and we had over-the-counter sales, so people could come in with cash and buy cryptocurrency. And when I was working there, I remember seeing the insanity start to ramp up. And at first it was, we only offered Bitcoin early on, and then we added Litecoin, a few other options. And over time, it got to November and December, and I remember looking at the office, and it's not this way anymore, but I remember looking out at the office and seeing shoulder-to-shoulder people crammed in. They could barely fit. All of them had stacks of cash, and they were wanting to buy whatever went up the most that day. This was the mentality of the people that were joining into the cryptocurrency space around that time. It was the height of FOMO, of fear of missing out, and everybody was just ready to kick down the doors and buy whatever the hell was being sold. And it was scary, and at that point I started looking back at what happened in 2013. And well, what had happened in 2013 was there was a huge parabolic run, and then there was a 2-year devastating bear market. Not only that, yeah, boo. Not only that, but when it happened, it was interesting watching the dynamics of what happened in Bitcoin and what happened to some of the other coins that were out there. Which ones came back in 2017 and which ones didn't. Because there was a whole other host of top coins in 2013 compared to 2017. If you looked at the top 10 back then, there's a bunch of names that most of you, unless you had been around at that time, would recognize. But at the time, that was the next thing. All of them were the next Bitcoin. This is going to replace Bitcoin. This is a great project. It's going to be huge. Now, where are they? I don't know, Namecoin, Feathercoin. Feathercoin legit said that Bitcoin is the gold, Litecoin is the silver, Feathercoin is the bronze. So, like the reasoning, there was just no reasoning, name, or, I don't know, there was a lot of excitement around nothing. And I saw some of those same qualities coming to light in December. People saying, oh, this is a great project because reason X, Y, and Z, but all of those things could be done on other coins or on Bitcoin. Or, hey, we've got X number of transactions per second. If that's your only measure for the value of your cryptocurrency, you're doing it wrong. That's not what brought people here. People weren't using Bitcoin initially because they thought, oh, you know what? I just can't get enough transactions per second on my Visa. Like that's not why people came. People came because maybe they weren't allowed to do something. Maybe they didn't want inflation. Maybe they wanted the separation of money and state. That's why I came. That's what interested me. So when I saw coins coming and people busting down the doors buying stuff because it had more transactions per second than Bitcoin, I started to try and shift that mentality and get people to say, I want to understand Bitcoin, and then use that as my litmus test as to determining if something else has value. So I shifted and I moved companies, and I'm now with Satoshi Portal, which is doing a lot. But one of the reasons I went with them is because they lean heavily towards just Bitcoin. And I'm not saying that other projects can't exist and thrive, but I came to this space because I wanted a separation of money and state, and I wanted sound money that was modeled after the fundamental properties of gold. So I wanted my money to maintain purchasing power. Of course, right now it's volatile as hell, but that's a long-term vision. But I wanted a money that inherently was scarce. And that's why I came here. And so in that vision, I want a company to work for that wants to push that, I won't say agenda, but push that idea on people. Of people having sound money, having control of their money, having choice of what they do with their money, and having nobody in between that can say, no, you're not allowed to do that. And so Satoshi Portal is very much, we'll say Bitcoin maximalist. And their idea is we want to build infrastructure and bridge the gaps between traditional finance and Bitcoin until we can get to a place where it's just Bitcoin. And one of the most important things that Francis Pouliot said to me when I was hired on was, if we do a good job, we're all going to be out of a job. And that would be the best case scenario for me. And I thought that was great, because really, when you have a bank as an app in your pocket, what do you need a company for? If your company onboards people into cryptocurrency, once everybody's onboarded, your company doesn't need to exist. And that's his goal. And that's a goal that I want to be a part of. Now, there's one thing that he also brought up that I think is very important. So, for those of you that are very new, I can pretty much see, but how many people here are pretty new to Bitcoin? Okay, good. So there's a bunch of hands back there. And how many people have been around for, say, more than a year or two? Okay, cool. Great. All right, so for those of you unfamiliar, Bitcoin, essentially a giant online ledger of who owns what. Your wallet is a key to a particular account that allows you to move money out of that account. Now, when you're downloading a wallet onto your phone, what you're doing is you have an app that allows you a window to see and utilize the Bitcoin network. You have a key to your account. You have your own account where your money is held. What you do not have for most wallets that are mobile is a copy of the online ledger. You do not have a copy of that entire history of what money has gone where. And I mean, for day-to-day funds, that's not a big deal. But when you're dealing with your entire life savings or a large chunk of money that you are holding, I think it's important that you're verifying with that ledger and that you have a copy of it. Because when you are not doing that, it's kind of like saying, I have a key to a security deposit box, but I'm trusting a company to tell me which bank that security deposit box is at. Another way to think of it is, I have this key and it's going to unlock a box that has dollars in it, but if the company so decides, they could say that key is actually for a bank in Venezuela, and instead of dollars, you have the bolivar. And you may laugh, but that very nearly happened last year. November, there was going to be a fork of Bitcoin, which meant that they were going to change the rules. They were going to do something called SegWit 2x. Now, the technicals of it are not important. What mattered was that the users were actually able to sway the trajectory of Bitcoin away from what all of the major companies in the space wanted to do. The reason why? Basically, when a fork happens, when somebody wants to change the rules of Bitcoin, you're going to have a split. You're going to have the previous version of Bitcoin and the rules, and you're going to have the new version of Bitcoin and the new rules. Now, if everybody opts to stay with the old rules, then the new version of Bitcoin will probably just dwindle and die, or just be very, very small and not be worth as much. If everybody goes with the new rules, well, then that would probably be considered the new Bitcoin, or the old Bitcoin, as what happened with Ethereum when it split. It switched the rules and people went with the new version of it, and that is now Ethereum. Well, with that split, what was going to happen is all the companies said, we want to change these rules, we want to go this direction, and we are going to support this new version of Bitcoin. And all the users said, we don't want that. Because then you've just set a precedent where companies get to decide instead of users. And so users had their copy of the ledger, their copy of the set of rules that they wanted to follow. And they said, no, we're going to run this version of Bitcoin. And if you companies switch, you're going to be hosting a currency that none of us are using. And so the companies then had to go, do we want to take that risk? Somebody went so far as to establish futures markets, which means that you can bet as to the value of each asset after that split. And guess what? The old version of Bitcoin that everybody's going to stay with was worth about 75% of the current Bitcoin value. The new version was going to be worth about 25%. Imagine if you were running a wallet on your phone and the next day, all of a sudden, a company has decided that the version that's worth 25% is the one you're holding. You're going to be pretty pissed off. And so when Francis approached me, he said, I want to normalize the behavior of running a node and actually verifying the transactions yourself. Now, right now, that's a little bit of a task. You have to download the Bitcoin code, you have to be running something, and you have to know what you're doing. But is there a way that we can make this maybe a small device that you can just plug and play and sync with an app on your phone? Is there a way that eventually down the line you could just have all of that compartmentalized onto your device? I think so. And I think that's the direction that I want to head. I want people to self-verify. And the reason for this is that it makes sure that people aren't screwing around. So if one of the major problems that I see with our current banking infrastructure is fractional reserve banking. That contributes to inflation. And I worry that if people get complacent enough and they don't self-verify that the underlying asset is there, we're just going to fall into the same trappings that happen with the fractional reserve banking system we see right now. If you start using your Coinbase account and that's just Bitcoin to you, well, eventually, what's to stop Coinbase from saying, we actually have more Bitcoin than we really do, and everybody's on Coinbase and they inflate the supply of Bitcoin. And everybody's fine with it because their Coinbase app works. I want to get away from that. I want people to self-verify so that it becomes impossible for people to inflate the supply of Bitcoin or whatever cryptocurrency you're using. Now, I do want to show you really quick here. This is one of the things that Satoshi Portal is responsible for. It's a platform called Bills, B-Y-L-L-S. And essentially, this allows you to actually pay more or less any Canadian bill with Bitcoin. So you can go on and you can send Bitcoin and they will pay that bill for you. You can also send money to somebody's bank account funded through Bitcoin. So for me, I'm starting to be paid in Bitcoin, and my goal is to separate myself from the current financial system to live independently on cryptocurrency. I'm willing to deal with the volatility of doing that from a perspective of my ideals and what I'd like to happen in the future. I'm willing to deal with those fluctuations. Not a lot of people are, and that's fine. But I think it's important for me to put my money where my mouth is, to have some skin in the game, and actually try and build out what I would like to see. And right now, I think platforms like this, where you're bridging the gap between cryptocurrency economy and the current economy that we have, I think that's very important. And there's going to be more on the roadmap. I'm not allowed to talk about some of the upcoming projects, but I will, of course, be talking about them as they come out. I'm excited to be working with Satoshi Portal. Bills is one tiny facet of what they're doing, but everything I've been talking about normalizing behavior of running a node, about being able to easily onboard people and get them actually utilizing this stuff, that's what I want to focus on. So with that, I will say, I'm going to take some questions from people out there, but I will say, if you want to find me, if you're not familiar with me, you can check me out. My YouTube is BTC Sessions. My Twitter is @BTCBenny. And then there's a bunch of other crap up there that you can find me on. But for now, I'm going to take some questions from people. And
I'm going to get with the mic.
Yeah. Ken's going to walk around with the mic. We can even take this up, I think, if that's okay, if anybody can
Did you want to play the Cool Wallet S video? So
yeah, because I'm going to give away one of those as well. But yeah, you can lift this then. Yeah, maybe I'll do that really quick. Okay, I'm just going to kind of show what the Cool Wallet is. I'm not going to play this whole thing. And this is kind of my style of video, what I typically do.
I was a little boy when I saw the place isn't here. You took all the bricks and built your home.
Hello everyone, I'm Ben with the BTC Sessions. I'm here at Village Square in Calgary, Canada, and today I'm going to take a look at the Cool Wallet. This is a hardware wallet for Bitcoin, Ethereum, Litecoin, and Ripple at the moment, and it is the size of a credit card. So let's take a look at how it works. So the first thing that I noticed with the Cool Wallet S is that these guys get an A+ for presentation. The packaging was pretty nice. Pull it out, and it has this nice little, I don't know, like a textured box, and it swings open. And inside, you can see there's a nice little inscription, and there is the card that you can pull out. So the card itself is literally pretty much just like a credit card. And then on the back, you have this e-ink screen here. You have a little button. This is actually clickable. And then these two little metal pieces here are for charging, so you can plunk it into the charger. There's also, you can't see it right now, but there's a little LED light here for when it actually is charging, so you can know that it is charging. Up top.
So I'm going to cap it there because you don't need to see a full explanation of how it works, but all you need to know is that it is a security device to hold your cryptocurrency. I met the CEO when I was in San Francisco for the Litecoin Summit. Super nice guy. I obviously did this video quite a while back, and then was able to connect with him and ask some of the questions that people had on that video. And they were nice enough to give me a number of those devices. I gave 3 away via Twitter and a little competition that I had on my YouTube channel. But I do have one more device that I would like to give away today. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take questions from people, and then after those questions, I'm just going to, I think I'll probably give it away to what I found to be maybe the most interesting question that I got. Yeah.
So if you have a good question and want a free hardware wallet, raise your hand.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be about the Cool Wallet. Anything that you have.
Back. So I can pay my credit card through bills? Is that how that works?
Ooh. Yes, yeah. So bills, you can pay your credit card, you could pay, I guess, your rent, you could pay your utilities, your phone bill, pretty much anything. They have 10,000 billers in Canada that you can pay through.
Beautiful.
So my question is, I love when people teach to others and just sharing the knowledge. So what is the most interesting topic, or what's the most common thing when somebody coming to you and say, teach me about this BTC, what does it mean?
Okay.
And what is the most interesting one, and what is the most weird one, and what is the one which you cannot answer till right now?
Okay. So the most interesting, the most frequent, and something I can't answer?
Yes.
Okay. Most interesting. I find the most interesting questions are often conceptual, as far as like, what are the implications for how we're going to live our lives? So diving into things like, what will getting your paycheck look like? Myself and Ken were just talking about this while we were outside, but currently, because of the way banking works, you work for 2 weeks, you log your hours, and a week later you get a settlement of that lump sum in your bank account settled on a single transaction. Well, with cryptocurrencies and the idea of microtransactions, you could go to work And technically you could turn on a drip. And every minute, every second, maybe every 10 minutes, depending on what your rate of pay is, you could have that money dripping into your account. So instead of settling every couple of weeks, you go to work, you just work, and then when you leave, you turn it off, and you're already paid for your time. So the idea of how people get paid, how people transact, the idea of online. Right now, before, you maybe had to pay for a subscription to a news service when you were getting a newspaper. Online, maybe you pay to get Wall Street Journal articles. Probably not, but maybe you do. But the problem with that is there was no way to microtransact. Maybe an article is only worth a penny. How do you pay for that? You can't use your credit card. There's a minimum charge for that, and they don't want to deal with those microtransactions. With cryptocurrency, you can. You can make sub-penny transactions for essentially no cost or for very little cost. And there's rails that are being built on top of currencies that can utilize those kind of transactions as well. So those kind of conceptual things I find to be the most interesting. When it comes to the most frequent, general security is very, very frequent. At least it should be as well. But how do I use a wallet? What is a wallet? If I delete this, what happens? What is this backup phrase I've written down? So a lot of the basics, those are super frequent because really the majority of people have still never held cryptocurrency or used their own wallet. So those are super frequent. And then something that I can't ever answer is, and this is also falls into the most frequent, but what's the price going to do next? That's always. So what do you think the price is going to do? Man, I don't know. But I am confident with the technology. I'm confident with Bitcoin, otherwise I wouldn't be here. And I wouldn't have put my skin in the game to lean that direction. So I can only say what I'm doing and what the direction I'm leaning, but short-term price predictions, dude, I have no idea.
Thank you, brother. I learned a lot. Thank you.
yeah, absolutely, no problem.
I'm new in this space.
Yeah.
And so probably just before Christmas, I bought $1,000 Canadian, transferred it into I guess it's called a hot wallet.
Yeah.
Is that what I learned today? Okay.
Yeah.
And I made a couple purchases overseas because they wouldn't take my MasterCard. And they said, well, we take Bitcoin. I said, hey, cool. So I transacted a little bit, but I'm just not sure whether I should be using it as an investment tool and riding it treating it like a stock, or whether I should be using it more as a transactional thing. And I also have a tax firm, so I want to know how can my clients pay me with Bitcoin.
Okay, okay. So how you utilize Bitcoin is a function of what you're trying to get out of it. So like you were saying, that use case of you needed to use it as a transactional method because all other transactional methods were off the table for you. And that's a very legitimate use case. I'd say the majority of North America, that is not the use case that they're going for right now. And that's just because we're lucky enough to live in a country where our currency is not the bolivar. We're not experiencing 1,000,000% inflation. I mean, it still sucks that, I can remember McDonald's meals being a few dollars and now it's like $10. So like I've seen a McDonald's meal more than double in the past decade or so. And my grocery bills, I consistently notice that I go to get groceries and my cart is less and less full with the same amount of money. So you do feel those impacts, but that's not, I would say, the use case that most people are using right now because they're complacent. They've grown up with inflation, they've always known it. Most of my friends, myself included, have never lived in a time where a gold standard was a thing. So we've always known fiat currencies that have no backing with any real world asset. So we're complacent with that kind of thing. But I'd say the majority of people that I know today are using Bitcoin as a bit of a speculative play, but that may be coming from two different ideologies. One could be the person that is just rolling the dice. The other could be, and this is more my case, from an ideological perspective, I believe that this type of structuring of how we do money is more moral and is in the best interest of the individual as opposed to the institutions. And so that's where I'm coming from. But because of that ideology, if it plays out, I also see there being a major monetary incentive for being some of the first people into that system. So I could be wrong and it could completely fail, but I'm willing to take that risk and be a part of it early. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And sorry, I forgot, was there a last point there that you were asking about? Oh, you're a tax firm, about how can people pay in Bitcoin? Yeah. Now that depends. Do you want
people with Bitcoin don't pay taxes?
Do you want to hold on to the Bitcoin when people pay you in it, or no?
I guess I would probably just change it back into the fiat currency, right?
Okay. So if that's the case, then you would likely be, the easiest way to do it is use, depending on how quickly you want to change it back. Like if you're okay with a little bit of volatility risk, then you could hold on to it and just change it out at the end of every week on your own through a third-party exchange. Or you could link up with a payment processor, which means that you would allow people to pay in Bitcoin, but you would get the Canadian dollar conversion of that direct at the time of payment. So this, again, is something that Bills and the company that I'm working with is trying to facilitate, having those ramps where you're bridging those gaps where I have Bitcoin and I want to spend it, you want to accept it and you want me as a customer, but in the end you want to be holding Canadian dollars. So that is something that the company I work for and other companies are working on providing. So you can do that, and typically the processing fees for something like that is about half to a third of what it would be for a credit card company. So less than accepting debit or credit.
I think we're running up on time. Do you want to take one more?
Yeah, let's, I saw one down here.
There's like 30.
Yeah. Here. And then I got to give away some stuff.
So I just wanted to know, do you ever see Bitcoin replacing fiat?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a hell yeah.
Fiat sucks.
So I think it's going to be a gradual. I don't think like all of a sudden everybody's going to be like, yeah, we're switching. I think it's going to be a gradual flow. And will fiat ever be entirely replaced? It depends how stubborn governments are, I guess. But what we've got now, I don't think that we should look at it as, hey, we're going to replace everything. I think we should look at it as, hey, we've injected choice into a market that used to be a monopoly. It used to be, you're born, and wherever you live, that's your currency. Now, you're born, there's a local currency probably, but hey, you've got other choices. And now, you can hold both, and over time, people will notice the difference between them. Hey, I saved $100. Hey, I took $100, bought Bitcoin with it, and let it sit there. 5 years later, what do I have? What's the purchasing power of each? So people can compare and contrast systems, and they can decide if they like a fiat currency that's not backed by an asset that can be inflated not only by central banks, but by actual banks through fractional reserve banking, or they can have perhaps a cryptocurrency that is finite and cannot be inflated other than the set issuance of that asset. So I think we get to contrast and compare, and people will decide what they want. And I don't think it will all shift one direction or the other quickly, but I think if one is clearly an advantage over the other, people will gradually filter there, and then maybe we'll see a bit of a quickening of that if one is very, very clearly the winner. So I guess we'll see. So I'm gonna give out device here. I'm gonna go, the gentleman back here. I'm gonna give you a Cool Wallet S. I'll come out and I'll pass that to you after we get.
So the tax man won a Cool Wallet S.
I'm trying.
I didn't see that coming. I'll be so seriously honest with you.
I'm trying to change minds. I'm changing minds.
That's how you do it, right there. One airdrop at a time.
Yeah, exactly. So
let's give it up for Ben Perrin, everybody. Come on.